3, 2, 1, go. Hey, what is happening, guys? So in our last video we created this forgot your password form, and we type something in here, username and email, and hit the request button. Then this request code would appear, which we would paste in here, then type in our new password and repeat our new password, and then check if they are correct, because if they are not correct, then this alert will appear, password match. Please check if password match, and all fields are completed. And also, this would match, but I would delete something from the request code and hit reset password, then the alert of verify code is not correct will appear. Okay, so we left out last time with only designing this, and in this episode we will actually, with the help of JavaScript, make this happen. Okay, so I really encourage you to watch the first part and then come back to this video if you haven't seen it. And also all of the code will be in the description below, and also the link to all of this series of videos will be in the description below. So before we get into the video, if you like this kind of content and you want to see more, then please consider to subscribe and also hit that notification bell in order to get notified each time I post a new video. Okay guys, so this being said, let's jump into the JavaScript part. Okay, so we have this open. This is working because we have this from our last videos. Actually, this is from part 2, I believe. Yep, it's from part 2 of the series. And now let's make this, and this to something, and also the reset password appear. Now let's go into our HTML. First, we need the logic for this password, a random password generator. Now, in order to generate the password, there are a few steps we could take, but I'm going to take the easy route and thus generate the password from a string. So let's call this generate password. Okay, so let's create a function. I'm going to call this function, or name this function random, and this will take in a min, a max, and a min value. Okay, now let's create a variable const with code chart, and this is where our code will live, from which the JavaScript then will randomly select numbers, symbols, and also characters. So let's set this equal to, and I'm just going to copy and paste this in this string. So we have our numbers from 0 to 9, then uppercase A to Z, then lowercase a to Z, and then just a few symbols. From this is where our code will be generated. Now, how can we achieve that? Well, first of all, let's create another variable, and we can call this character math, because we need the math. Not Martha. If you can guess the movie, then leave a comment in the comment section below with Martha. Okay, so now let's call math, then floor, and within here we're going to call the math function again, then random, and then multiply this with a max minus min plus 1, then add the min to it again. Okay, now let's create another variable, another constant, and we're going to call this random code. So rand code. And this we will assign to an array, and this array will take in this math function, and then we will assign it to fill from the code char, so from the code characters, and then map, so dot map, and within here we'll create another function, let's call it x, and we will return x, and because x is now an array, we wanted to return the math dot floor. This should take in then math floor, math dot random times x dot length. So this would be kind of our logic for the code generator. Now we need to join this, so we hit dot join into an empty string. Now let's just call the function by return the random code. That's kind of it for the logic for the code. Now in order to display this, let's type in here comment display. Now call document dot get element by ID, and we'll take the ID of generate code. So let's go into our HTML very quickly. Where do we have it? So we'll take this ID of generate code from our submit button right here, request, and we'll add an event listener to this. So when we click this, then the function, we just create an empty function here, should do following. We'll now type in random code, and we'll assign this to this function that we created. Sorry about that. And because it's awaiting for 2 parameters, let's just say we want it to be a maximum of 10 and a minimum of 5 characters. Okay, so let's go down here. And actually, let me just quickly go into our CSS. And because we have that displayed as none, new password, where do we have it? Got password, there it is. We comment this back in, and there we have it. So I'm just going to display this as block. Let's overwrite our CSS. So this right here. So when we click on this, okay, so we have this displayed. Now let's go back into our HTML, into our JavaScript. And now that we have that displayed, let's create a const, and we'll name this request code, and we'll assign it to document get element by ID again. And now we'll take the request code. This is the generate code. I'll take the request code, this right here, ID. So the input, this was our input tag when we wanted to be displayed the code. And we'll assign this request code to be equal to this random code. Okay, so now if we click, actually I forgot to create another variable because we need to also take the container. So display code container equals to document get element by ID, and within here we'll target the ID of, let me just go into our HTML, request code container. Okay, now we have to create another variable const, and we need to grab onto the request code. So we need to grab onto the ID of this request code. So we'll name this variable request code, and we'll assign it to document.getElementById. And now let's call this constant, and we want the value of it, the value of it to be equal to, or we will assign it to this random code. So when we hit the request button, the code appears. And if I hit it again, another code is generated, and another, and another. Okay, got it. Now let's continue on, and let's handle the other things. So now we'll grab on, let's create another const, say display code container. Not this, so display. And we'll assign it this to document get element by ID, and we'll grab on to the ID of code container. Let's go back into our HTML. So this request code container, the entire container. Now we still need a couple of things. Create a const, new password, and we'll assign this to document.getElementById, and within here we'll grab on to the ID of new password, so the second form ID. Because I want, when I click on this request code, the code to appear, and also the second form to appear. Now I could actually take this out right now, so display it as none again. And when I hit on this, on request code, it should appear. And this is pretty simple. We will just type in display code container dot style dot display. And we'll assign it to be as block. And hit save, copy this, and also this variable that we created should also be displayed as block. So let's try this out. So I click on this, enter something in here, hit request code. Now the code didn't appear, but this appeared. Now let me just take a look what I did wrong here. And this can't appear because I never set it to be displayed as none. So let me really quickly take this class, go into our CSS, go down here. So this class display none. Now we can take the code, press code, and display it as block. Okay, so the problem was that we shouldn't have displayed the request code as none, and we should have displayed the container of request code, where do we have it, as none. So within our CSS we have to display the ID of request code as none, and then within the JavaScript we can display it as block. So now if I type in here anything, username, now the request code is displayed and also this is displayed. But we only want this to be displayed if we type in a username and a correct password. Because you can see it's generating me a code, so without authenticating this. And I don't want this. I want the code only then to appear if I typed in a username and a password. And also let's take care of this. I want the username and the password to appear right here. And I'm actually going to go, where? Let's do it up here. So I will create a const again, not a variable. I will call this get user ID. And I'll assign this document.getElementById. And within here we will target the ID of username. Take out this dot. So let's go into our HTML. So we will target this ID of username and then this ID of user email. So the username dot value, we want the value of it, plus, now let me create a break tag, then plus again, document get element by ID, and within here we'll target the user email, and from this also the value. Now that we have these two, we'll now create another const and we'll call this display user ID. And I'm just going to assign this to document.getElementById, and now we'll go to our HTML and select, where do we have it, this H2 with the ID of display username. And actually within here is where the username and the user email will be displayed. Get by ID, and within here we'll type in our D and then dot inner HTML, because we want to push something in the inner HTML, and we will assign actually this const that we created. So let's try this again. We type in here something and in here something and hit the request, then the username and the user email will be replaced within here. Now keep in mind we are still staying within this function. It's waiting for a click, and then this function should do all of this. Got it? Now let's go for the logic. So for the conditioning, we only want this to appear when these two are filled out, the username and the email address. In order to achieve that, we need to grab on to a couple of things. We'll create another const. We'll name this user name, because we have them within here, but we merge them into this const of get user ID. Now we're just going to grab on to this and also grab on to this, so the user email. Okay, now we have our two variables created. Let's make a few conditions here. So if the user name dot value is equal to an empty string, or the user email dot value is also equal to an empty string, then the new password container dot style dot display, so actually this should be displayed as none. Now let's think about it. So if the username, the ID of username, so this one, its value, it's equal to nothing, and also the user email, its value is equal to nothing, then the password, so this form right here, will not be displayed. And also we don't want to display the code container. So this should also be displayed as none, as long as this condition is not met. Now else, we'll copy this to in. If the condition isn't met, then they should be displayed as block. So let's check this out. So if these two are empty, and I hit request, nothing happens. It prompts me to fill it out. If I hit request now, then this is generated, the code is generated, and the form and the new password form also appears. Now, after I request this code, I want these boxes to be empty. And we can achieve that by just typing in username.value should be assigned to an empty string then. So this means that when this happens, then the username.value should be emptied out. And the same thing for the email. Now let's try this out. So I'm just going to type in something, the username, user email, hit request, and only this appears, the code appears, and these fields are empty. Okay, now let's take care of this part. Now within here, we want to type in the code. So this code, a new password, repeat the password. Then when we hit reset, it should verify. But I want that these two should match, and this should match with this. And I also want when I click on this, then the password should not be dots, but actually appear as what is typed within that. Okay, let's first of all take care of the verification code. Now, let's create a const. We call this verification code. Or actually verify request code. So we want to verify if the code that we typed in, okay, because we just comment this out, that the code that we typed in here is equal to this. Now let's create this const verify request code. Let's grab onto our DOM element, so document get element by ID. And now we need the verify request code ID. So this input field. And we will also need the request code. So const, let's call this request code. And let's grab onto it in the DOM to get element by ID. Let's go in here. We have it, request code. Now let's create a function. I'll name this reset password. And this function should have a few conditions. We actually type in if the condition that verify code dot value not equal to request code, then alert reset code don't match. Okay, so let's try this out. Now actually we have to also call this. So let's go outside of here and just call document and get element by ID. And now we want to grab onto our button down here the idea of reset password. And we will add an event listener to this. So when we click this button, then this function will be called. Okay, so now let's try this out. So this, we got our request code. Now let's hit, actually I have to fill this in, reset. And why isn't this working? Oh, because I forgot the dot value. Okay, let's try this out again. Here we have our request code. I have something in here. Let me actually take a look. Request code before initialization. Wait, what? Oh, because I forgot to type this in as an ID. Yay. Okay. Let's try this again. There we go. Reset code don't match. So this is not valid. So we got this done. Now let's also make this to passwords match. And actually, I'm going to type this in as an else if. And we'll start the if statement up here. So if x.value, but before we get into this, I want to actually be able to see the codes, because we can see if they match, we can see them. So let's go up here and we'll just type in here a comment of show password. Okay, for this, I'm just going to create two consts, one called x, grab from the DOM get document by ID of the first password. So new password 1, and then we could just copy this and we'll call this y, and this should be the second. Now let's create a function. We'll call it show password. And this will taking the following. So if x.value is equal to password, this should be the type. So if the type of our input is password, and also the y type is password, then the x.type should be a text. This will convert our input from a password input to a text input. And also, let's do the same thing for the y. And else, we'll leave them as password. Okay, so now let's try this out. So we type in here, these are passwords. Now we have to trigger this by clicking on the I, and the password should turn into text. And for this, we're just going to take from our DOM with the query selector the ID, or actually we can also use document.getElement by ID, and we will take the show password ID and we'll add an event listener dot add event listener, and this should listen for a click, and when this click happens, then this show password function will be called. So let me go into HTML, and we took this ID, so this icon right here. Okay, let's hit save and try this out. So request our thing, type in something in here, now click on this, and we see they don't match. Now let's take care of the logic that they don't match, because if I hit reset, only the reset code doesn't match appears. And we want that to appear at the end. So first of all, he should check if the passwords are correct. And for this, I'm going to transform this into an else if and push it down, and up here in the reset password function, I will go with an if. Now I can take the x dot value again and check it if it's not equal to the y dot value, or check it if they're empty, because I don't want this to be submitted exactly as the last one if they're empty. And for this, we're just going to type in here that if x dot value is equal to an empty string and the y dot value is also empty, then an alert should appear with the string of please check if passwords match and if all fields are completed. Now we just have error handling here, but what happens if you have success? Then we type in here an else alert password reset successful. Password reset successful. Okay, now let's try this out. We'll type in here Meinhardt at media.com. Let's hit request. Now let's type in the password, hit reset, check if password match and all fields are completed. Well, all fields are not completed. Let's type something in here. Still check if password match. Let's check if the password match. Well, the passwords do not match. Now let's match them. Now let's hit reset. Reset code don't match. Okay, let's take a copy and paste the reset code within here. Let's hit reset again. Password reset successfully. And that's it. We made it. Okay guys, so thank you very much for watching. This is it for this video. In the next episode, I will do the create new account, and we will store everything within our browser, so in a local storage. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Thumbs up if you did, thumbs down if you didn't. Please don't forget to subscribe to my channel, and also hit that notification bell if you want to get notified when I post a video. So catch you next time. Bye bye.